Hi everybody, and this is the first video I'm going to make about really getting stuck into your art journey. If you want to, you might have dabbled in art or painting or drawing before. You might have gotten a taste for how wonderful it is, or you might be a really good artist or like really well practiced. You might think you know what you're doing. All of these things, all of these people will probably be able to get something out of what I'm going to show you. Okay, but let's just start with the basics. And the basics is, there's two different things. Apart from your willingness as the person who wants to come up with something and wants to do something more interesting with their art, that's the first ingredient. Now the second ingredient, which is pretty important, but it's kind of accessible to anyone. You don't have to have money. You don't have to have money to make art, essentially. You really don't. And you don't have to go to expensive art supply shops, but we're going to go into that more later. First of all, one of the most important things is your workspace. Ideally, if you have it set up somehow in wherever it is that you live or work, that you can have a little dedicated space that you can, ideally you can leave. And I don't mean leave it in a mess, but I do mean leave it with everything accessible to you, because basically there's nothing more uninspiring than feeling inspired but then having to lift everything or move everything or sort through everything just to set up again. So ideally, if you ask me, because that will literally get in the way of you wanting to do it, and when you want to make art and when you really want to make art that comes from your soul, it needs to be a soft, natural flow. And anything that stands in the way of that is going to stand in the way of you getting to that point. And so this is a key thing. So if you can have a workspace, maybe you have to pick up your stuff and put it in a little side container, but still, if you can have it so that you can, let's say, tip all the stuff out quickly, you've got to be able to move to that space without too much drama. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about materials. So let's talk about if we were painting or drawing. So here we're going to discuss really making a piece of visual art. Now, I work and have worked in all different sorts of mediums, and I find all different sorts of mediums very interesting. And these days I kind of mix a lot of them together. The only one that you really can't mix with the others is oils. Anything. So this is the key thing. There's two different kinds of paints. There's oil-based paints and there's watercolor-based paints. So today I'm just going to talk to you about watercolor-based paints. Water-based paints, meaning in the mixture of the paint there is something that makes the color, right? Something that makes the color. So the pigment, which is basically tiny ground up little pieces of pigment. And then there's the thing that makes it flow. Otherwise it would just be powder. And so when somebody says, or when you see that it's a water base, meaning water is the thing essentially that makes it flow. Some different paints have different kind of other things in them, like acrylic. Acrylic has something it's also got water, but it also has like something that's sort of like almost like a glue, like a PVA glue. But essentially, if you mix water with it, you can make it run. And this is a really important thing. Like, just it seems like real basic, but to know this, it means that you can put the right things together. So it also means that you can put things like gouache, acrylic, and watercolour into the same mix, and you won't have any problems. So for me, it's really key to understand the structure of your paint and to know this and to know how it's going to behave. Just because you want to know everything you can about the medium that you're working with in order to approach it with more control, more understanding. The interesting thing is see this? This is house paint. This is it's called like a mist tint from my hardware store. So somebody who's going to paint their kitchen or something, they're getting a colour and they didn't like it or whatever it is, and then the hardware store puts these out for like $2 or $3 or something. And I always go and have a look at what mist tints they've got, because first of all, it's a little bit of a lucky dip and it makes you have to be a bit creative, but also you can just get a colour like this, which is a very neutral colour, and this colour is useful all day long. Like this colour, you can mix with other colours. You could use it to prime your boards with. You just can't go wrong. So if you see a nice colour, this is another way to get paint, and essentially this is very similar to these guys, but this might have a little bit less pigment per like amount. So these guys, which are watercolors, have more pigment per kind of cubic centimetre, or that's not the right way to do it, let's say per millimetre of paint, and these guys might have a bit less. But in saying that, sometimes you just want to cover something, and that's pretty opaque. You can see it's covered it. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. If you can't afford pretty expensive paint, because a lot of paint is really expensive, then get creative. Use house paint. Nothing wrong with a bit of house paint. I use it all the time. All the time, actually. Now, the next thing is your brushes. We've got brushes, and I've got my pencils here. And I've also got my charcoal. These are all different things that make marks in different ways, different softnesses, different textures. The way that they flow on the surface is different. And as far as I'm concerned, you're better off to know more about what these different things do than know less. If you know what certain things do, you can go back to it like a repertoire. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do when we're building our ability to paint. It's like a language. It's like learning words and learning letters and then learning words, because then you know how to construct smart or cool or descriptive or effective sentences. So mediums are cool. If you get the chance, trial something new. Don't be afraid, and for goodness sake, just because you get good at using something, definitely don't just stick with that, unless that's all you want. But if you want to really know how things go, don't be afraid to kind of make a mess in a way. Definitely don't early on start to try to make pretty pictures. No, because if you get locked into something too soon, then how do you experiment? How do you find something that is actually what your real passion is, but you stop like, just like the word go, you know? You're like, oh, I know how to do that, I'm just going to do that. No, don't do that. Keep experimenting, particularly if you're a new person to doing it. I say also, if you feel safe with something, if something seems like comfortable, that's when you should try something else. That's when you should throw in a new ingredient into the mix. So one of the most important things is the canvas, or whatever it is you're going to work on. I used to, I really don't really do it anymore, but I used to buy these. These are like little stretchers. You can get ones that aren't too expensive these days, but particularly when I started painting, they were really expensive. And like I said before, if you have anything psychological that's like pressure when you want to go into the flow, it's literally going to hinder you. It's like going into the flow with ropes connected to you. And this is just from my experience, for me, so I can only talk for me. Having a canvas, it's all crisp and white, and I spent whatever, $20 on or $100 on or whatever. That's the pressure, man. You go, oh fuck, what am I gonna do? Oh, and it's all white and fucking neat, and you don't know. So fuck that. Get that out of the window. Sorry for swearing. I'll try not to swear. Throw that out the window. Particularly if you're starting. Maybe when you know exactly what you want to paint and exactly how to paint it, then go invest in a lush canvas if that's what you want to do. But right now, if you are just scraping on the surface, you're just beginning, this is what I highly recommend, and this will actually improve your artistic practice 1,000-fold. See this? This is cardboard that I pulled out of the bins at the back of the supermarket. I've cut them down to size. Mate, nothing wrong with these. I've also then gotten some of this house paint, and I've basically covered it, but this is a blue, you can see, but I've just covered it. So I've got like a canvas. You could even paint on the raw brown, which is a really nice thing as well. But for this video and for videos to come, I've covered these with a bit of house paint, so I've got a bit of a canvas. Now, the good thing about this is I have no pressure. This thing cost me nothing. I got it out of the bin or the recycle box. This is an old box. Got it from the supermarket, wherever you want to get them. And literally there's like about 1 cent of that paint from the hardware store on here. No pressure at all. You don't want pressure when you are just learning. You don't want to don't show anyone either. If you want to go deeper, you have to first of all learn to be humble and to know that you know nothing. So you can't, it's like saying, oh yeah, I can dance a ballet, a beautiful elaborate ballet, when you don't even know any steps. It's kind of ridiculous. It's like crazy to think that you can. So don't be like, oh, this is this perfect picture I have to make. Not yet, man. What you have to first do is build your repertoire. And the way to do that is to understand these, your brushes, what they do, how they behave, and these, your paints, what they do, how they behave, what happens when you mix more water, what happens when you maybe mix some medium, which is really not, that's not even a must, that's just another thing to consider. What happens if you wipe it with your hand? What happens if you use a brush that you've never used before? What happens if you don't use a brush at all? You have to learn how to make marks. For example, this is a piece of soft charcoal. There's different kinds of charcoal. There's one called compressed charcoal, which is really hard. It's really unforgiving. Like once you lay it on, there's no getting rid of it. Soft charcoal, look at this. It's very soft. It's kind of like the charcoal that they pull out of a fire. But just by understanding what this does, by studying it like a scientist, right? Just interesting things like, okay, you can just notice how if I do this, if I do that, I get that effect. Because you need to understand how to make all different sorts of marks when you're going to make art. Here's another thing. What happens if I put water on charcoal? Does it work? Like, what happens? Oh, okay, look at that. It kind of washes it away. It doesn't really mix with it like paint does. It washes it and kind of cleans the area. And then you go, oh, that's right, you need a trusty rag. Have a rag near you. Also have a bit of protection under your surface so you can make a mess. Once again, you don't want to be uptight. Now, getting back to this. So I'll put some water on there. Let's have a look then if I dab the area. What happens? What kind of effect do I get? Look at that. It's almost gone. It's not very exciting, but I'm trying to show you how to understand what different mediums do. And this is compressed charcoal. Totally different story. Look at it. Looks kind of the same. This weighs about 20 times what the soft charcoal does. You can feel it in your hand. Totally different. Look, listen. This is real light. This is real heavy. Now let's have a look what this does. I make a mark with this. I do a similar kind of thing. And I rubbed it on its side, remember? You can see it's way more black. Look at that. So black. So much more of the thing that's making it black, which is kind of like the pigment in the paint. You can see the two different worlds. Soft charcoal, compressed charcoal. Now you just store that in your mind, because one of these days you're going to go, I want to get that effect, and I remember I got it when I used charcoal or I used compressed charcoal. You think to yourself, oh, I want to plan out this painting, but I don't want to get locked in. So you don't use the compressed charcoal. You use something you can wipe away, something that's forgiving, that lets you just experiment. And then you lock it in. All these sorts of things. You need to be prepared to make a mess. Because you just don't know. You don't know what you're doing yet. Unless you know all these mediums, I've done 1,000 paintings. I've done 1,000 different paintings to work out what these things do. Now see this? This is acrylic. Can you see how it's not very black? Like, it's black, but at the same time, when I add a bit of water, it's pretty wishy-washy. Of course, some acrylics have more pigment than others, but at the same time, acrylic, for example, this is like the consistency of like a lot of acrylic. This is good to know. You just need to know what the paint does. You also want to know what your brushes do with the paint. You don't have to spend a lot of money on brushes. In fact, I kind of like the cheap ones. They're just like little, I think they're like synthetic brushes. These are all synthetic. If I had a choice, I'd actually go for synthetic brushes. They're fine with me. I think if you're going to choose a couple of brushes, like these are now coming like little packs of 12, and they're so cheap. Like they're about $5 or something near me, but I don't know if everybody has access to that. But ideally, it's always good to have a square brush, you know? And you'll know what I mean and why I say that when you get one and you kind of play around and work out what it does. And then you have another one that goes to like a point. It's always good to have at least one of these. Then you can have thicker ones, thinner ones, but really a square one and a nice pointy one, they're the key. A square brush, this is not a very good one because it's a bit fuzzy at the end, but I think it'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'm going to dip it in the paint, and I'm really actually going to use the square shape to kind of make a square, not a square, but like to use the side of it, see? It's a shape that you can kind of create certain forms because of the shape of the brush. Now, in contrast, let's have a look at this one that goes thick and then point down to a point. I'm going to grab some paint on there and I'll just do the same kind of thing. So obviously I can't do the same thing at all with this brush, but not that I would want to. But this brush can do different kind of things. This brush obviously can do lines or little details, see? All of these things, I'm not painting anything particular. I'm learning what the brush can do. I'm learning, and this is what I'm saying to you, I'm learning when I need to, let's say, go back and dip into the paint. Or maybe I make the decision to dip into the water, and then what happens? When would I make that decision? Why would I choose that brush over that brush? These are the things that you really need to have something that looks like this. Of course you can paint something while you're doing it. Paint my cat. But really, I'm just trying to make you laugh, but what I'm really trying to do is learn what my mediums can do, okay? And the only way to do that is to have a canvas that you're not attached to the outcome of. Not yet, okay? Not yet.